As Square Enix announces a major loss of over $140 million, as well as a planned change to their business strategy once again, with a focus on being more selective in their development process and IPs to work on. This does mean some unfortunately canceled projects. We're all over here taking part in a gaming revolution driven by absolute passion. That and a clear inventory stash problem. But first, hello everyone, and welcome to another No Rest for the Wicked video. The devs have been hard at work updating this game and keeping us all up to date on the latest information about this game's future, and we're going to get into it here in this video. Also, guys, if you're looking for more Wicked content, I got a few guides that I'm in the process of making right now, and those should be ready to roll out this week, so I hope that you get the opportunity and check those out. And along with these news and discussion videos, those are going to keep rolling out here on the channel. So please keep your comments and questions coming in this video. Besides all the updates from Thomas, we got a couple of questions and discussion topics later on in this video. So thank you guys thank you. As a side note, I'm also still waiting for more information about Light No Fire. So if you're curious about that game, there will be videos that I cover here on the channel as soon as we have more that we can talk about in detail. But let's get to the real reason why you clicked on this video, and Thomas shares with us some interesting possible teases about the future of this game. Now he writes, I haven't seen anyone posting any real decked out cool houses yet. I think the Whitaker needs to sell more furniture instead of us mostly dropping the blueprints, but it is still a surprise as well. Now I'm guessing everyone is just out there killing stuff. Now Nico replies, are you thinking of adding in instruments to the game? Would be cool if multiplayer. Also, I haven't gotten around to decking out my house yet. Mine has only chests in it. And if you guys remember the previous videos, they're talking about they're going to open up housing much sooner. That's going to help with inventory and stash management. Clearly, that's just a note if you guys didn't see yesterday's video, to check that out if you get the opportunity. Anyhow, Thomas replies regarding instruments. It's not high on our party list right now, but that would definitely be cool, especially for multiplayer. Imagine being able to hang out in Sacrament with your buddies and everyone rocking their own instruments and people playing songs together. This adds in a whole level of content creator mindset, because this is just a little thing that I know that some people would rather have more bosses, right? And I'm actually in that camp for the most part, but sometimes these little touches really just add to the overall experience. And so I don't want to be a negative Nancy or a gatekeeper on what the devs want to make. I just want them to have the passion to do that. I think that's what we're seeing with this team. I think the vision is slowly coming into the greater content, or the greater zeitgeist of the discussion around this game, and even more. In fact, SkillUp just released his review. It's absolutely glowing. And so if you haven't had the opportunity, check out his review as well. Now, Thomas continues, I liked how that stuff worked in The Last of Us and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Pretty sure that we could do something similar. Now, we also got some pretty cool musical stuff coming up in general. We've seen comments talking about the lack of, the music kind of, living in the world, but it is what it is. We'll see how that evolves. So I'd love to feature our musicians by doing a concert, even a concert event in Sacrament every now and then, when we feature them as NPCs and playing their songs. I think that's really cool. I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about it, and it's going to be great to see how that evolves over time. Now, I do want to say thank you guys so much for the support. I'm both humbled and grateful for those of you who've taken a chance and hitting that subscribe button. It was literally just last week that I thanked you guys for 78,000 subscribers, and literally like a week later, you guys have already pushed the channel up to 79,000 subscribers. So thank you guys so much for that support. If you guys are new around here, I want to earn your sub. So if you feel like the video that I make that does it, sound off in the comments below like these legends, so I can thank you for that. And if I missed saying thank you to anybody who has subbed, I really do appreciate it. Also, a great, incredible other thing that just I'm flabbergasted. Thank you guys so much for the likes on the videos themselves, with some of them now crossing over 800 and a couple of them approaching 700 likes. It's absolutely mind-blowing. But I do want to talk about one bit of feedback that I've received from you guys before we dive more into what Thomas and the devs have to offer you. Mox says, great video, got my sub. Welcome in, Mox. One piece of feedback, do you think that you could stay away from visual spoilers? I ended up seeing a boss that I hadn't seen yet, and I had to listen to the rest of the video. Thanks for all your hard work. And I am going to take this feedback and really try to make something like that happen. So for those of you worried about visual spoilers, it's going to be a challenge. I don't want to like overcommit and be like, you'll never see a spoiler from me, because everybody is going to have different degrees of spoiler sensitivity. And so essentially, I hope that my videos from an audio perspective are structured that you get the core of it without having to ruin that visually for you. That's kind of the best way that I can go about it. I do plan not to show story spoilers as opposed to just like fights and the content around the game. That is just kind of my personal preference, but I do appreciate this feedback. If you agree with Mox, sound off below. It is going to be an effort if I was going to try to take it to the extreme, because if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. In fact, that is the overall review that I get about my character. If Brian says that he is going to do something, it's just a function of time. Whether that's in the short term or the long term, he will do it. In fact, I've made a journey to lose over 100 pounds. Currently, I'm down over 70. And that's just an example of that. It's hard as hell. I'm really looking forward to when I can reintroduce some of the foods that I'm personally avoiding, but it is what it is. Anyway, thank you for that feedback. I'm taking into consideration. I'm going to do my best, but I also structure these videos that you could kind of listen to them as a podcast in and of itself. So, that I think we're going to go with that for the short term, but again, open to any and all feedback that you guys have on the channel. Anyhow, let's continue on with what Thomas has said. He says, I'm getting more and more of these messages from people, and I think it's great. Our goal is to change the status quo and to make the kind of game we always wanted to play. And it seems like we're already creating a new genre. I don't know why I struggle with that word. My brain blitzed on me. Can't wait to see who will make the first Wicked like. And I think that's an interesting kind of concept, because he also gets a couple of questions, and I want to highlight one of those here. Boogie writes, I didn't stop playing since the early access release, and I love this game so much, but I'm afraid that if you overpromise, no matter how great things are that you deliver, people might still feel disappointed and expect more. For me, I'm happy to read this and wish it happens. Wishing you all the best. This is reasonable discussion, right? I've seen this happen time and time again in development. Devs in their passion, we see this happen with Sean Murray. We brought up Light No Fire earlier in this video, where his passion overtakes the communication of when the expectation of time happens. And if you go look at, No Man's Sky right now, I would say he's delivered on every promise. It's just a function of time. And so this is interesting because it's always important, because our own expectations in our mind are our worst enemy when it comes to games. We see this happen in MMORPGs all the time, for example. And if you guys are interested in more MMORPG coverage, check out Ginger Prime Loves MMOs. It's its own little channel. You can go find it within the channel section in and of itself. But I'm not here to plug myself. I already did that. Anyway, Thomas goes, it's my job to some degree that I have to lay out the vision to make sure everyone at Moon can align on it this way ahead. When we started Wicked, lots of people, even with their own teams, said that we shouldn't try to compete with the Souls in terms of combat. After that, we didn't get some of the tools ready in time. And we had some people on our team claim that we'll never only ever be able to get 5 or so weapons in and ready for launch. I vehemently disagreed and was shooting for hundreds instead, because it was clear to me that was ultimately what we needed. Lots of people say I'm crazy when I started talking about crafting and housing early in development. I got a ton of farming, fishing, housing. People wanted to kill stuff. Why would anybody care about all this crafting stuff? Comments from all sides, right from the get-go. I've learned over the years not to listen to all the naysayers. I think that we're all sort of lazy at heart and would always prefer to not do those last few reps. But unless you finish those reps, the muscles can't grow. This is wise and sage advice. The best thing I can tell you, especially if you're young and developing and getting ready to go and conquer the world and do all the things that are on your heart and your passion, don't let people naysay you out of doing something. In fact, it's so easy to naysay, and it's so hard to do. And what we deal with, you and I, in this world of social media, is this mindset where you can saying things are more important and grab more attention than actually being something that somebody does something, right? So it's so easy for humanities, and that's where it's frustrating, because you see people getting so much attention. You're like, oh man, and I'm doing all these hard things, and somebody over there is just pretending like they're doing hard things. So actions speak louder than words, and that's what I think is the most important thing to look at: the fruits of a thing, right? The fruits of their time and passion and development have led to an incredibly early access experience. And based off of that and what we've seen already from the devs, I think it's going to lead to an even better release candidate whenever that time does come. But we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. Now, another question says, I wouldn't go so as far as saying Wicked-like as a thing. Maybe once you really round up your game, but right now Wicked is still very much Souls-like. Noah too, and did a RPG loot Dark Souls, while still very much so saying Souls-like. The survival aspects aren't enough right now. And Thomas says, you're judging the game here and now, and I already think a few steps ahead here. We'll keep implementing these features we couldn't get into the early access launch, and with all of those elements that we're combining, I don't think it will make sense to classify Wicked as a Souls-like just because there are no other Souls-likes that does this. I think, comparison in this case is actually a form of flattery. Calling this game a Souls-like, I think right now, is a form of flattery, but we've seen what he is hopeful for in many games in the past. And the best example would be Borderlands to Destiny. If you guys remember the launch of Destiny, it's, Borderlands, meets Halo was the comparison, because we didn't have anything else to measure against it. Now you see people compare it to Destiny. Like, is this game going to be a Destiny game, or is it going to be like Destiny? And you don't hear that much talk actually about Borderlands. So I think in this case, No Rest for the Wicked is actually setting itself up to become that pillar in which that we then judge other games on it. But it will take time, and that's not going to happen overnight. And that's obviously going to be about how these features are received. Now, let's jump into our community discussion and questions, because I think this is really where the title of today's thumbnail comes in. And first, we want to start with two comments. First, from Brad, says, how are they going to afford to develop this game for 10 years without microtransactions? They could just work on the next game and actually make money off of it. Cleston writes, I don't think No Rest for the Wicked is going to be developed for 10 years. Most companies that make such claims change their tunes when and if popularity wanes over time. That perspective sort of assumes that the rest of the companies in that genre are going to be standing still. Others will take it up to copy aspects of it if they are praised by gamers, and while it may be something unique now, it may not remain such after 3 years from now, etc. And so these are brought together because, I think there's a cool theme I'd like to discuss with you about how essentially I view this topic. First and foremost, how are they going to afford it without microtransactions? Man, microtransactions, I'm not a fan of, right? That's one of the things that when it comes down to it, I choose not to engage with those systems. I don't complain about them because I just don't care that much. It's just like, oh, it's a system, it's an economy. I just kind of avoid it because that's how these things work. If people are going to spend the money, they're going to spend the money one way or the other. But ways that gets restricted, ways that gets limited, or ways that gets abusive are clearly seen throughout the industry. And so for me as a parent, I make sure my kids stay far, far away from that nonsense, because I think it can train your brain into unhealthy behaviors. But it is clear that they make money, right? And so how does the team plan to afford the development of this game without microtransactions? Well, they're not giving the game away for free. That's a plus. That means there's an initial cost to playing the game. And I like the buy to play model personally. I think it's the most healthy model when it comes to video games, because you then don't have to go with such mass appeal. You can make a more niche or more targeted focused game, which is what the team is doing here. You don't have to appeal to everybody. Oh, we got to bring in super easy baby mode so we can get enough people who will then spend money on the cash shop, for example. But as he has stated that this game is, and when 1.0 is released, it's going to be like their Fellowship of the Ring with a bigger, broader vision for the game overall. Well, I think that means they're going to probably be selling us expansions. That means that as that expansion rolls out, depending on the frequency of that chapter, you're going to see that you're going to kind of have either a yearly or every other year or whatever that cadence is, kind of a check-in with a touch point on, hey, let me give you guys some more money. This brings in marketing, this brings in hype, this brings in people buying the original game. So I think the expansion model is a healthy model when it comes to games like this. Now, do they mean that they're going to develop it for 10 years? We've seen plenty of companies state this and quit. I judge the quitters harshly, because if you're going to say something publicly, stand by your words. It's one of the things that I try to implement in my day-to-day life. It's a hard thing, but speak truth, because that is the most loving action that you can give people, as opposed to just trying to tell people what they want to hear. It's frustrating, because I see that play out online a lot. And I talk to a lot of content creators who feel trapped because they can't speak, that, because otherwise they'll say the quiet part out loud and they'll lose followers. And in and of itself, guys, I appreciate y'all for being here, and I might say something that makes you unfollow me. And honestly, that's okay. I want you to have the best life possible, but I'm not going to be in a way shackled and, kind of try to dance and tiptoe around a topic that I feel that's important to talk about. Anyway, I will judge them harshly if they do abandon that. It's the same thing with New World devs. They've set a 10-year plan. As long as they stick with it, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the number one game in the world, but they say, hey, we're going to stick with this for at least 10 years, then we're going to see what's up. That is what I want to look at. Yes, other companies have totally quit, and I will not trust them with future games. EA is a great example of this with Anthem. Hey, we're going to remake Anthem 2.0. Oh, no, now we're not. I think I'm going to pass on anything EA talks about regarding the service, game, or a live service game, or an MMORPG. I just don't trust them to stick it out. I do trust Moon Studios. They have a track record. They've delivered an incredible product, and I think it's only going to get better from here. I could be wrong, but who wants to be wrong about that? And if I'm wrong, I'll own up to it. We'll talk about it in future videos, but I don't see that future happening. And that's, maybe my bias speaking in this case. A couple other subjects. Node Wizard and M Creep writes, glad you don't play mobile games either. They're MTX cash cows, and they're horribly created to be addictive for little kids with impulse control issues. I've been playing No Rest for the Wicked since day one, and I love this game. It offers everything an ARPG should, and then more. Now, Eppin writes, pandering to the lowest common denominator stifles innovation. Making phone port will sacrifice development of the main game. If phone gamers want, they can stream it using a variety of streaming services. And that's actually one of the things I'd like to point out. With GeForce Now, which is one of the things I use more than anything else to play this game, it is great because it can run on your phone. I still don't play on my phone because I try to limit the use of my phone when I'm not at work, so that way I'm focusing in on my kids. A lot of people might be like, hey, how do you manage having 6 kids? How do you manage doing content? How do you manage a job and do your stand-up comedy? I don't live on my phone. I get so many hours back because I'm not endlessly doom scrolling on some app, right? And that's essentially kind of the advice that I give to a lot of people. So I don't tend to focus in on phones for games. If I'm going to sit down and play a game, it's either a handheld or PC or console, and it's kind of a more intentional experience. But yes, I don't let my kids also play these kind of mobile games because we keep seeing that. I don't let my kids on social media either. There's just things that your brain needs to fully develop before you can look at something and go, yeah, that's pretty stupid. Yeah, I'm not going to give you $1 to have a chance at winning some kind of silly hat for this character, right? I worked hard for that dollar. I'm going to hold on to it. You gotta give me a better offer than this RNG nonsense. So I think that's important. But the important aspect of it is that, especially with mobile streaming services, phones have also gotten much, much more powerful. And that's just going to be a development cost that they have to kind of consider. Because again, like I said, are they going to sell this game, or is it going to be a free to play on mobile? Or if you own the game, you have access to it on mobile. I think there's still value there. And I'm going to let the devs kind of make what they feel is the right call in this regards. But yes, don't go with that MTX, cash cow gambling nonsense. Will this game support, microtransactions in the future? Well, honestly, it's interesting to see how people view microtransactions on a good game. I've seen people say, Elden Ring's so good, I wish I could hand them more money. And I get it, right? No Rest for the Wicked, so good. I wish there's a way I could thank them more. I've seen those kind of comments in my comment section, and those are valid kind of points. Now, I think, again, the expansion model is the most likely, and at some point I could see them adding in, some cosmetics or something like that. I personally hope they avoid that with all vigor, like with all discipline, because the temptation is there, and we see how it can kind of corrupt the mind. Now, after 10 years that they're like, hey, all right, guys, we've run the race, we've had the good fight, and then they want to change the monetization. That'd be kind of dramatic in a way, but like I've gotten my value out of the product at that point to where I'm not going to be too overly distraught if something like that changes, but I'll keep you guys up to date on that. Now, one final comment from user says, I read a lot of threads of people expecting an end of year 2025 release. Can you give any additional insight as to why you expect one sooner than later? Great work as always. Sub today and looking forward to future Wicked content. Thank you so much, user, for the sub and this final topic before we wrap up today's video. It could be a 2025 late release for the 1.0, but mostly what I'm speaking of is when is update 1, which is the multiplayer update. As we look at that roadmap, it's clear that we don't have any kind of time frame to judge when these things are rolling out. However, the developer brain in me speaks to it like, when we do get update 1, I'm going to do some basic math of early access to update 1. What was that time span? Development happens if you think about game development specifically, in 6, 9, 12, and 18 months kind of chunks. There are things that are just going to take a lot of time to do, and so I kind of look at it in that structure. If update 1 comes out this summer, that means they were already, starting work on it 6 months at a minimum prior. And as that development gets ready and gets tested and then gets moved into or merged into the main offering that we have, that is what's going to tell me what kind of sprint schedule and what kind of kind of operation they're running. And it's not that update 2 would follow then the same pattern of 3 months, but ultimately if it ends up being 6 months till update 1, then I would expect roughly that same time frame for update 2 and 3, which would put the release of 1.0 sometime in late 2025. That is a reasonable expectation. So I'm not trying to say that 1.0 is going to be out this year, but I'm going to judge the release based off of the first update that we get and the time difference between early access and that first update, because that's where I think a lot of insight that I'll end up kind of reading between the lines is. I tend to be incredibly accurate. I hate to sound too braggadocious about it. It's just, this is something I do for a living, and so I get to bring you guys some expert hands-on, kind of real-world experience, especially as I'm working on my own video game as we speak. Anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for the members on the channel. You guys are incredible. I hope you enjoy all the exclusive content and perks that we offer here. Also, if you guys want to support the content for free, check the links in the description. I have a couple of affiliate deals. You can always like the stream. That's a great way to support it. So thank you so much for those of you who choose to do that. If you didn't like it, you can always double tap that dislike button, get it unstuck. From time to time, it jams up, and so you gotta really wiggle it there to get it working. But outside of that, guys, I look forward to your comments. And if you want to get involved in the community here, check out the top link in the description. With all that being said, this is a long enough video. I hope you guys have a most excellent day, and hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.